Are you ready for illustration work? We're going to break down that answer in 5 different points with 2 simple analogies that I think will really help you get your head around this topic and help you figure out what the answer is for where you are in your situation. I am Clint Cearley. I'm a professional illustrator and art educator, and we're going to start with 10K mastery. You've probably heard this before, but it's a great place to start, and that it takes about 10,000 hours of intentional study in order to get what we will call a general mastery of something. This could be subjects such as, skateboarding or playing the violin. In this case, we're talking about illustration. This doesn't mean that you are a master at everything. It means that you can do any general subject with, I would say, competence, if perhaps not exceptionalism. All right, you understand all the fundamentals and how they fit together. Okay, so do you need 10K mastery? This is our hour chart. Each one of these represents 1,000 hours. The answer is no, not to get into the industry. But there are certain positions or perhaps jobs that you will need that amount of time in order to land those. And that brings us to point number 2, which is net hours. The cumulative amount of time that you have spent studying and learning a particular subject. Now, I'm actually going to use that as a literal analogy of a net. Let's bring that up. So you can think about it like this. As you're studying, as you're learning, as you're adding these bits of knowledge into your skill set, you're actually increasing the size of your net. So over here, we see a one size net. We're kind of equating that to the size of our chart here. So if you've put in 1,000 hours, your net is a one size net. Whereas if you can keep studying and you keep improving your skills, your net is going to get bigger and bigger. We're going to call this a 10 size net over here. Well, what do you do with those? Those are what you use in order to catch your jobs. Now, this could be either a freelance gig or a studio position. And there are little fish and there are big fish. Over here is what we will consider the 10-time fish, or probably work, say, on like a AAA game title, whether that be illustration or concept art. Right? Well, can you catch a 10-size fish in a one-size net? No. I mean, if you've ever been out fishing, or even think about it for a second, you can't catch a massive fish in a little net. The fish is bigger than the net. You need to have a proportionally sized net to catch that fish. So the answer is, can you get work in the illustration field? Yes, but it is going to be, proportional to the size of your net. As you put in more time, your net is going to get bigger and it is going to expand out what sort of positions and jobs you can get. What I see really common is people trying to get really big fish with much smaller nets. Now, I would say that generally speaking, it takes about 3,000 hours to even get through a lot of the basics of drawing. This is just having a working understanding of perspective and light and shadow, and doesn't mean that you've mastered all these things, but even just being familiar with all of the concepts takes a considerable amount of time. Now, a little quick thing here about the hours. If you're trying to figure that out in your head and you're like, okay, 3,000 hours, 1,000 hours, how do I even kind of guess that? Real simple way to do that. There's 365 days a year. But if you drop off the 104 weekend days and some holidays or sick days, it leaves you with about 250 work days a year. And 250 is a really easy number to work with because all we need to do is times that by 4 hours a day, and that is going to get you 1,000 hours, essentially a part-time job. If you practice 4 hours a day, 5 days a week, for a year, that is going to land you 1,000 hours. Now, obviously, you could double down, work 8 hours a day, study 8 hours a day, and you're going to half that amount of time, or you could do half that much time, and it's going to extend that to 2 years. But that gives you an idea where you can kind of work around with the numbers. Now, we we need to move now to narrow to broad. That is where this bar also goes from narrow or niche on the low end to broad or general on the other end. And this has to do with your skill set or what the job requires. On the low end, you can actually start making money fairly quickly with your skills, but you're going to have to really focus down to a particular topic. Say that you're just doing, I don't know, you've got like little comic strips with funny little monsters, okay? I'll give him some horns. And that's mainly what you spend your time doing. Just cute little cartoon monsters and comic strips, and you print them on t-shirts or stickers or something. You don't need a general mastery with 10,000 hours in order to do that to a high enough level to be able to market that. However, that also doesn't mean that you are then ready to land a big studio job or position. This is a good way to think about it as far as like a little bucket. We have to fill this up in order to reach what we will consider a pro level, professional level at this dotted line. These are all different aspects, different topics or subjects. This may be like character design. This might be lighting. This could be concept art with environments, say. And we're filling that with our hours. So if you put in, say, 1,000 hours, you've just filled up maybe this much of the container. Put another 1,000 hours in, you're going to fill it up a little bit more. And every 1,000 hours, you're going to just keep adding this up until you filled it all the way up. Now, that's what's needed for a lot of the bigger jobs. They require you to be a really excellent generalist. That means that you need to be able to do just about anything to a very competent level. It needs to be characters, backgrounds, animals, action, different lighting environments, different kinds of narrative scenes. And there is no quick way to get good at doing that sort of thing. And this is the issue that I see come up a lot in portfolios and in reviews during consultations. That somebody has put in, usually it's 3,000 to 5,000 hours, and they're trying to mimic the portfolio or land the jobs of somebody nearer the far end of 8,000 plus. And what theirs looks like is they've filled it up to about here, right? And they've got all of this filled in. They're not going to be hired for those sort of things. They're trying to be a generalist, but they're not as good on everything. Whereas you would probably be better to be really good at a couple of things and not as good at a few other things, and then you are marketable or hireable to do those things, and then that way you can start making some money, and then you start raising these up as you have time. Because if you are trying to do everything at the same time, it's going to take a really long time before you get any jobs. I'm just throwing that out there because it is something to consider. It may be better than say, I really love doing environments. Okay, then get hireable doing environments and then try to bring your character design up. Then bring up your prop design. Then bring up your spaceship rendering, whatever it is that you're trying to do. Move over to learning curve. This is something I think people have a really fuzzy understanding of the learning curve to do a broad skilled position. And let's bring up a little write up here. Occupation learning curve. Different jobs require a certain amount of time to learn how to do them. You want to be a cashier at the convenience store down the road. You can probably learn to do that job in a week or less. There's not a big learning curve to that. Whereas if you want to become an entry-level illustrator, you're probably looking at a minimum of 4,000 to 5,000 hours. This is where you have understood enough of the fundamentals and have been able to throw enough time into specific subjects to become hireable at those. you're not yet well-rounded enough to do the general stuff, and maybe 4 to 5,000 if you've played your cards right, put your time in right, and kind of position yourself in the industry with your portfolio correctly. Whereas if you want to get some higher jobs or more, we'll call them AAA titles, I rarely, if ever, see anyone grab those with anything less than 8,000 hours. Again, education, where you're getting it, how long you're studying, can be a variance there. But from my observation, that's the sort of thing that I'm seeing. Of course, if you want to become like a doctor, at least here in the US, that's going to take a minimum of 10 to 14 years. However, this may also be similar to anyone looking to get what you might call a senior position or a lead position at a job in a studio, illustration studio. If you want to be a lead artist or lead concept artist or a senior art director or something like that, you probably need a minimum of 5 years, more like 10 years in the industry after you've put in your time to land a position like that. A little tip on that is don't try to build your portfolio as an entering illustrator to try to land one of those positions. You're not going to get it. It would be better for you to build your portfolio to try to get an entry-level position. If you want to get some more information about this as far as the concept art field, FZD, Feng Zhu, on his channel has some really good videos about this. So go check his out. He kind of breaks that down for the concept field as far as building portfolio for the right place in the industry based on your skills and the amount of time that you've put in. The last thing we want to touch on is comparison. A simple way to think, am I ready to get work with a particular company, is compare your average work to the average work being put out by the company right now with the artists they're using. If yours is of the same quality or better, sure, you're probably hireable. But if you're not, then they don't have any reason to trade down in quality to try to grab you to do their work. So you can do that. Also, you can try to get some feedback from the community. A lot of different art communities out there. We've got an active Discord. People are happy to give you some constructive feedback or second pair of eyes to compare your work and try to give you an honest feedback. Not to like self-promote, but I do have consultations. We go over some of this stuff in the consultations. Interested in scheduling one, you can find a link in the description below. That's my breakdown here. I hope you found this helpful. Maybe get your head around the whole getting work in the industry thing. If you enjoyed this video, I've got a bunch of others here on the channel. If you're new, I do recommend checking out the popular playlist. And if you want to get in on our art challenges, stay tuned. Those come up pretty regularly. And again, more information on the Discord group. So until I see you next time, keep drawing.